Because indifference is the most devastating form of power, isn't it? When they can no longer feed on your reaction, your silence becomes the mirror that forces them to face what they've done. Suddenly, the circle that once felt so strong begins to fracture under the quiet weight of its own guilt. You didn't have to expose them. They're doing that themselves, with every nervous glance, every awkward attempt to rewrite history, every hollow, "How have you been?" sent to test whether you've truly let go. And you have. You're no longer in the prison they built for you, no longer seeking validation from the same mouths that once cursed your name. You're free, and freedom, once tasted, becomes the most addictive rebellion imaginable. Because while they were busy erasing you, you were busy evolving. You were turning their betrayal into blueprint, their cruelty into clarity, their silence into space for your own voice to echo louder than ever. They thought exile would break you, but it became your initiation. You're crossing over from the fragile world of pretense into the unshakable realm of truth. And the irony? They built your stage for you. Their attempts to bury you just gave you roots. Their gossip became the soil from which your new life grew. You became the living proof that no amount of manipulation can kill what's meant to rise. You became the reminder that the truth doesn't need defenders. It just needs time. And time, my friend, has done its work. Now, their empire of whispers is dust. Their stories are unraveling, and all that remains is your unshakable presence, calm, unbothered, radiant. You don't even need revenge anymore because existence itself became the victory. Every step you take now, every breath, every small act of joy, is an act of defiance against the falsehood they built. You've outlasted the noise. You've become the silence that haunts them. You've become the truth that no one can spin. You are the living contradiction to everything they told others about you. You are the proof that their version of you was never the real one. And while they crumble trying to regain control of the story, you're out here writing new chapters they'll never be invited to read. So here's the reality now. They can't touch you, they can't label you, and they can't define you. Because you've taken back authorship. You've reclaimed the narrative, and every word you write from here on is your own. The time of being misunderstood, underestimated, or erased is over. The world will see you not through their distorted lens, but in the sharp, brilliant focus of your own light. Let them whisper. Let them spin their little stories in dim corners. You're not shrinking back into the shadow that made them comfortable. You're expanding, unapologetically, into the full scope of who you are. And that expansion, that unapologetic visibility, is something they'll never be able to contain. So let this be your moment of arrival. Let this be your resurrection, your declaration, your quiet but thunderous, "I'm still here." Because you are. You are the name they tried to forget, but can't stop remembering. You are the energy they tried to smother, but still feel lingering in the room long after you've gone. You are the lesson they keep reliving, that truth cannot be destroyed, only delayed. You've already won. You just did it quietly, beautifully, on your own terms. And if you've come this far, if this story feels like it could have been yours, then don't let it end here. Hit like if you felt that shift. Share it if you know someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you're done letting others write your story. And if you want to help keep messages like this alive, raw, real, unfiltered truth told without permission, consider becoming a member or making a donation. Every bit of support helps keep this light burning, helps make sure stories like yours are never erased again, because they tried to silence you. But look who's still speaking. That's when the slow dawning hits them, the creeping, uncomfortable truth that maybe, just maybe, they were the ones who destroyed something rare. Maybe they pushed away someone who genuinely cared. Maybe they traded authenticity for acceptance, loyalty for ego, and compassion for control. And deep down, they start to realize they weren't victims at all. They were the architects of their own downfall. While you were out there building, healing, thriving, surrounding yourself with people who actually see you, their little empire began to rot from within. Because cruelty is never a sustainable foundation. It cracks, it splinters, it eats itself alive. The lies they told about you began to conflict. The stories they swore by stopped aligning. Whispers turned into contradictions, and the carefully crafted narrative started collapsing under its own falsehood. People began to notice. Outsiders started questioning the script. Those who truly knew you began pushing back, saying, and from that moment, their fiction began bleeding truth. The facade fell apart, and in its place came a heavy silence filled with guilt, with exposure, with the raw, inescapable realization that they had become everything they once accused you of being. Under the pressure of their own pretense, they cracked. The lies got too heavy to hold. Their guilt began leaking through their smiles, through their carefully worded posts, through their sudden bursts of self-awareness. The same people who once pointed fingers began offering apologies disguised as explanations, confessions masked as closure, and excuses dressed as growth. They tried to rewrite history, softening their parts, stretching the truth, turning deliberate cruelty into misunderstandings. But you know better. You remember the precision of their silence, the calculation behind their exclusion, the sting of every whisper designed to twist your reflection. You were there when the blade turned, and no amount of revisionist storytelling will ever undo that truth. So what now? Now that the masks are off, now that the truth is crawling into the light, now that their words and actions finally clash in full view, what do? Do you welcome them back with open arms, believing their talk of change? Do you let them reclaim a seat in the life they once tried to burn down? Or do you choose something infinitely stronger? You let them live with it. You let them carry the weight of what they did without you lightening it. You don't seek revenge, because you've already transcended the need for it. You've moved into peace, the one thing their chaos could never replicate. Your revenge is your growth. Your revenge is every sunrise you wake to without their shadows at your door. Your revenge is becoming untouchable, not by hiding, but by radiating so much genuine joy and purpose that they can't even stand to look directly at it. That's the kind of justice that lasts. Not the dramatic confrontation, not the public exposure, but the quiet, steady, undeniable truth of your evolution. Because here's what they'll never understand. They thought cutting you off was punishment. They thought excluding you would break you. They thought building walls would keep you out. But all they did was set you free. Free from the pressure to shrink yourself to fit their comfort. Free from the suffocating need to earn the approval of people who never wanted you to win. Free from the exhausting cycle of trying to prove your worth to those too blind to see it. They thought they took something precious from you. But in truth, they handed you the clearest map of all. The one showing exactly who deserves your energy and who doesn't. And now that they've cracked, confessed, and begun their desperate dance to justify what they did, you get to stand still in your strength. You get to decide what forgiveness means on your terms. You get to choose whether reconciliation is even necessary, or whether silence is the closure they've earned. You owe them nothing. Not your understanding, not your softness, not another open door. Protecting your peace doesn't make you heartless. It makes you healed. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It means finally releasing the grip of their memory over your heart. And sometimes, the most powerful forgiveness is the one that happens in your own mind, with no announcement, no contact, no invitation, just peace. Because wisdom isn't bitterness, it's pattern recognition. It's seeing the cycle and stepping out of it before it swallows you again. It's knowing the difference between someone who made a mistake and someone who is the mistake. That circle wasn't an accident. It was a choice, built on insecurity, ego, and control. And now, the weight of their own choices has come to collect. That burden is theirs to bear. You don't have to help them carry it, and you don't have to stick around to watch them crumble under it. Let them face the reflection they spent years avoiding. Let them unravel under the truth they once tried to bury. Let them learn what it feels like to lose someone who would have stood by them through anything, if only they'd been honest. You, on the other hand, you owe it to yourself to keep walking, to keep thriving, to keep building a life so luminous that the very idea of returning to that old darkness feels unthinkable. They didn't break you. They tried. They schemed. They gathered. They whispered. They waited for your fall. But you didn't fall. You rose. You turned pain into power, betrayal into clarity, loss into liberation. You became proof that sometimes the ending of one circle is the beginning of your true alignment. They didn't exile you. You outgrew them. So thank them, quietly. Thank them for showing you the depth of your own resilience. Thank them for revealing the poverty of fake love. Thank them for the lessons that hurt but transformed. And then, walk away, calm and unshaken. The story doesn't need their participation anymore. You've already written the sequel without them. Because here's the truth. Most people never have the courage to admit. When they finally realize what they've done, it doesn't come as a single cinematic moment of guilt. It comes in waves. It comes when they're sitting in silence, scrolling through old memories, seeing a photo of you smiling, before everything fell apart. It comes when they hear your name in a room where your absence is suddenly too loud to ignore. It comes when they try to find the same authenticity they once dismissed in someone else and realize it doesn't exist there. That's when the real regret sets in. Not the kind that can be soothed with a simple, "I'm sorry," but the kind that claws at them from the inside, whispering reminders of what they lost every time they see you living without them. They'll replay the moments they chose ego over empathy, gossip over grace, competition over connection. And each replay will sting a little harder because you're no longer reachable. You've evolved into a version of yourself that they can only admire from afar, a version they'll never again have the privilege of knowing. And as that realization deepens, so does their unraveling. Their once tight circles begin to implode under the weight of their own duplicity. The alliances they formed against you turn fragile because they were built on shared resentment, not respect. One person starts confessing, another starts deflecting, and before long, the whole story collapses under the unbearable pressure of truth. You don't have to do a thing. You don't need to confront, expose, or retaliate. You simply exist, and that existence alone becomes the reckoning. The universe has a quiet, devastating way of balancing things. What they thought they buried comes back to them in fragments, disguised as random conversations, sleepless nights, awkward silences, and that persistent question they can't escape. What if I hadn't done that? And no matter how much they try to rewrite the past, no version of it feels right. Because deep down, they know they were the villains in the story they tried to narrate against you. Meanwhile, your world keeps expanding. You've learned to breathe differently, love differently, trust differently. You no longer crave validation, because you've learned that peace is louder than applause. You've replaced those empty spaces with genuine connection, with people who don't need to shrink your light to feel seen, who don't confuse your strength for threat, who don't mistake your silence for weakness. You've learned that solitude isn't loneliness, it's sovereignty. And that kind of power, the quiet, grounded, self-assured kind, can't be faked, replicated, or stolen. It's what terrifies them most. They spent so long trying to make you small, only to discover that the version of you they dismissed was the foundation of something unstoppable. And so they linger, watching, lurking, pretending not to care but caring deeply. You'll feel it in the sudden messages that come out of nowhere, the half-hearted attempts to reconnect, the carefully phrased apologies that sound like PR statements instead of genuine remorse. You'll see it in the way they circle back through mutual friends, testing the waters to see if time has softened you. But you've changed. You're no longer interested in performing forgiveness for the sake of their comfort. Forgiveness, to you, isn't about letting them back in. It's about freeing yourself from the last remnants of their energy. It's about walking into your future so fully that the past can't follow. And if you ever wonder whether walking away was the right choice, remember this. Peace doesn't require explanation. You don't have to justify why you left, why you stayed silent, why you chose yourself. Growth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up in the way you no longer react to the things that used to break you. You don't need them to see your worth. You already did. You don't need their confession. You already lived through their deceit. You don't need their closure. You created your own when you stopped looking for it in people who were never capable of giving it. Because here's the final, unshakable truth. They can't go where you're going. The person you've become, the one forged in silence, polished by pain, and reborn through self-respect, doesn't fit in the world they tried to keep you trapped in. You've stepped out of their orbit entirely. You're not angry anymore, not bitter, not even nostalgic. You're free. And that freedom, that unbothered radiance, is the justice the universe gave you in exchange for every tear, every betrayal, every time you stayed quiet when you could have shouted. You didn't lose them. They lost access to you. And that's the kind of loss that echoes forever. So let them sit in the lessons. Let them rebuild their narratives, rewrite their apologies, and call it growth. You've got better things to do. You're building peace from the ashes they left behind. You're creating joy without permission. You're existing in truth. And that right there is what survival looks like when it's done beautifully. And as time stretches forward, something remarkable begins to happen. The people who once mocked, dismissed, or conspired against you start to fade, not just from your daily life, but from your emotional landscape. The memory of them loses its sharpness. Their power over your story dissolves into insignificance. You stop replaying the conversations. Stop rewriting the past in your head. Stop wondering what might have been if they'd chosen differently. Because now, you understand that their choices weren't about you. They were about the limits of their own hearts. They couldn't meet you at your depth, because they've never gone there themselves. They couldn't recognize your value, because they've never truly valued themselves. Their betrayal wasn't a reflection of your weakness. It was evidence of their fear. Fear of your authenticity, your strength, your refusal to conform. You were a mirror they couldn't stand to look into, because seeing you meant confronting everything they weren't. So they turned you into a villain, because that was easier than admitting they were cowards. But now that the fog has lifted, you see it clearly. Every cruel word, every false story, every deliberate attempt to make you small was just a desperate effort to silence the truth you carried effortlessly. You didn't need to expose them. They exposed themselves through the way they treated you. And that realization is your quiet triumph. You never had to lower yourself to their level because the universe handled the balance sheet for you. Their lies fell apart on their own. Their alliances crumbled under their own deceit. The masks they wore finally fused to their faces, and now they can't tell the difference between who they pretended to be and who they actually are. That's their punishment, to live trapped in the characters they created, while you've stepped fully into your truth. But here's what's even more poetic. Life has a way of rewarding those who keep their integrity intact. The universe notices when you choose growth over vengeance, when you choose silence over chaos, when you choose evolution over ego. Doors start opening. Opportunities that once seemed unreachable start appearing effortlessly. The kind of people who see you, who genuinely value your energy, begin gravitating toward you as if pulled by some unseen force. That's because authenticity is magnetic. It draws to it what's meant to stay and repels what was never meant to last. You'll find yourself surrounded by people who understand your language without translation, who see your strength and don't feel threatened by it, who don't need you to shrink so they can stand tall. That's the life you were always meant to have, the one that only reveals itself after the storm. And maybe one day they'll see it too. Maybe they'll watch from afar and finally understand the magnitude of what they destroyed. Maybe they'll whisper your name with that quiet ache that comes from knowing they can't ever go back. They'll see the way you laugh now, the way you shine without apology, the way you move through the world with unshakable peace, and it'll hit them. What they tried to bury didn't die. It bloomed. You became everything they said you couldn't, and you did it without bitterness. That's the part that will haunt them the most. Not your success, not your growth, but your peace. Because peace is the loudest revenge of all. If this spoke to something deep in you, don't let it fade into the scroll. Like to show you're still standing, share to remind someone else they can rise too. And donate if you believe stories like this deserve to keep being told. Real, raw, and unapologetically true.